Welcome to the Metaware Debugger training. This is MDB Session 4, where we'll show you how to use the Source and Disassembly windows. In this session, we'll show you how to access the Source and Disassembly windows and use them to debug your code. We'll highlight some of the key toolbar buttons which can be used to change the formatting in these windows. After launching a debug session with MDB, you will usually find that the source window is already open. If it's not, then you can open it from the display menu as follows. If your source window displays a message about no source information, similar to the following, this means that the program counter is at a place in the ELF where there is no associated source code. This is because you are stopped in code which is compiled without debug symbols, like the startup code and runtime library code. If you see this when stopped in your application code, you should recompile it using the -G option. As you can see, if we run to main, the message disappears and we can see our source code at main. The source window shows you the current file name and path, and you can scroll throughout the entire file. If you are scrolling and lose sight of the current program counter location, you can press the Show PC button to return there. You can navigate to different areas of your application by typing a function name or a file and line number. When specifying a function, you can use standard wildcard characters or a partial name, and the debugger will resolve those, or prompt you to choose a function in case of more than one match. You can also open the Functions window to see a list of all the functions in your ELF file. Here you can also use wildcards to narrow down your search. There are small gray dots next to each source line which corresponds to the actual compiled code. This tells you where you can put a breakpoint. Breakpoints can be inserted in a few different ways. You can double-click anywhere on the line to add the breakpoint, and then double-click again to remove it. Alternatively, you can select the line that you want and then press the break button, or the F12 key. Finally, you can right-click on a line and choose either Breakpoint, Hardware Breakpoint, or Software Breakpoint from the pop-up menu. Hardware breakpoints require action points in your ARC configuration and are useful when the code is in read-only memory. The debugger will insert software breakpoints by default unless you override that by turning off the toggle called Prefer Soft BP at debugger startup. If you attempt to add a breakpoint on a line with no dot marker, the debugger will instead insert the breakpoint on the next available line. The right-click menu has a couple of other useful features. If you select a line, and choose Run to Cursor, the debugger will run to that line as follows. You can also set the PC to any line by first selecting it and then choosing Set PC. Note that doing this can break your program's logic, but it can be helpful during debugging when you want to skip over some code or execute a sequence again without restarting the program. Let's now take a look at the disassembly window. Although it's possible to open this window from the Disassemble button on the Source Windows toolbar, this is not recommended since the window won't be preserved during debug sessions. Instead, open it from the display menu as follows. As with the source window, the current program counter is shown with a green arrow. You can also scroll in this window, but note that you are now scrolling through the entire memory space, not just the current source file, so the scrolling is much more sensitive. It's therefore often better to use the GoTo field to enter the name of a function or even an absolute address. As before, the Show PC button can be used to return to the current program counter location. By default, the disassembly window shows you the current function name plus an offset. Use the L hex button to toggle between this display and one which shows absolute addresses of each instruction. The source lines, if available, are shown in blue. These can be removed by pressing the Mix button and again restored with another press. When you've suppressed the source lines, note that you'll still see the line numbers from the C source if they are available. Finally, you can toggle in the actual instruction opcodes. This is helpful if you're looking at the code in a memory window or a binary dump and want to compare what is shown in the disassembly window. In this window, breakpoints are inserted exactly the same way as with the source window, either by double-clicking, using the break button, or the right-click menu. You can see that the right-click menu features like Run to Cursor and Set PC are also available in the disassembly window. The debugger techniques discussed in this presentation are covered in detail in the Designware Metaware Debugger User's Guide for ARC supplied with the Metaware toolset. In particular, please see Section 3.2, Viewing Source Code, and Section 3.3, Viewing Machine Instructions.